Hi, this is Matt Wilson from Privateer Press, and today we're going to be talking about the art and visual design for our new miniatures game, Warcaster Neo-Mechanika. We start with a lot of world building, what do the societies look like, how do they interact? Every game like this is going to be made up of certain contested factions, and we want to make sure that they all have a distinct feel and vibe and motivation. And then we start translating that into the visuals, looking through reference, looking for things that would inspire us, trying to find those things that we can latch onto that would give us design beats.
If you want a big, huge factory, find cool photos of a big, huge factory. You don't have to try to design it in a vacuum.
Hey, here's a robot. We like this sort of thruster jump pack setup that it has on its back, right? And then here's a tank that has really cool armor. We want to translate that into something onto a warjack.
That looks really cool. What are the things that we can do with this to make it look even more teched up? Like, how would this look 100 years from now, 200 years from now?
If we know that the Iron Star Alliance has a higher technology and access to more industrialization, then that's going to influence the design. The Marcher worlds we know are scavengers, and they reuse parts of airships and vehicles and upcycle things to build their bases or their colonies. Those give us sort of a roadmap of what sort of visual information to start gathering.
Does it look like it still fits in the world? Because if it looks like it fits in the world, then you're doing it right. Differentiating between the factions came pretty naturally, just because we have so much experience dealing with creating a new faction every single year for War Machine and Hordes. As you do that, you have to be able to have a unique look. Iron Star Alliance, sleek, sleek, sleek. That's the kind of stuff that's inspired by like motorcycle armor, hockey equipment, that kind of gear.
They're higher tech, they're a little slicker, a little shinier, but at the same time, they needed to have most military feel because they're sort of the most organized of any of the factions, where the Marchers, right, being a bit more ragtag, we made sure that they're not as uniform, right? They all feel like they go together, but there's no two soldiers that look exactly the same.
Thinking more modern military, essentially like a desert camo, a little bit more angular and blocky stuff, big chunky shapes, and cloth and metal.
That's all informed by the original concept behind the faction.
Eternus Continuum is very cyberpunk in their design overall.
Street smart, high-tech hooligan feel with the hoodies and goggles and gas masks and things like that. They sort of mask their identity.
Taking cybernetic augmentation to a next level and making them a little bit more mysterious.
The grafter, who has extra appendages that have been added on, right? He's got a couple of crazy little surgical arms in the front and then a couple of other little crazy arms that have been stuck on the sides. The Empyreans were a really unique and fun challenge. We didn't go into the Empyreans really having an idea of what exactly they were going to look like. They're the race behind the hyper-Uranian that connects all the worlds of the galaxy. We kind of thought that it was going to be something somewhat angelic, but as we got into it, Andrea Uderzo, our concept artist, he's brilliant, and he started wandering in some other directions, and we started seeing shapes and forms in the exploration that he was doing and pulling those out. Everything that we've shown for them so far is robotic. And a lot of those robots are true robots, not just their warjacks, but their infantry even are actually robotic.
Is this a long dead bunch of different races of aliens that have essentially taken their souls and put them into robot bodies? Or are these robots that are being controlled by a separate force? What has life? What doesn't have life? Does it have feelings?
While they are entirely mechanical, we went for really organic forms. They have tentacles and tails and wing-like structures all over them. Many of them aren't even humanoid. They look like floating eyeballs or jellyfish, and has a lot of contrast with the other human factions. And it's going to be fun to see them juxtaposed against each other in future artwork.
Some of the most important things to take into mind whenever you're designing anything or working on a new IP or any of the IPs that we have at Privateer is production. How will it look as a model, and can we make it?
When we're designing a model for the tabletop, we're always thinking downstream about how it's going to be produced, what material it's going to be made in, how large it is. And that informs the design quite a bit, because there are certain things that we can't do. Thin antenna, for instance, right? Or things that are very spiny like a porcupine. Those aren't going to be able to make it through production. We tend towards chunkier shapes, things that have a lot of mass and real strong silhouettes because we want them to be distinct on the tabletop.
If the concept is going to create nightmares in engineering and then nightmares in molding and casting, I'm not doing it right.
We had some other interesting challenges that we hadn't necessarily tackled before with Warcaster, and that was the idea of customization. We made the warjacks and the vehicles so that you could actually customize the weapon loadouts on them, and that required some new thinking for us. We expect that people are going to want to put magnets on the guns and be able to change the loadouts of these warjacks in between games, and so we had to make sure that the weapons are designed, to be large enough to be handled, that the connection points where you might magnetize them are going to be large enough to accept a magnet and hold that piece on there. So there's a lot of sort of early pre-engineering that goes into the design of each of these models, as we're also working on the creative design just to try and make sure that it's something that's original and compelling. One of the main things that we wanted to communicate as different in Warcaster from the Iron Kingdoms was the technology level. Warjacks have a very recognizable and specific anatomy in the Iron Kingdoms. And we wanted to have some of that in Warcaster so that you knew when you looked at a model, that's a warjack. And the warjacks in Warcaster are definitely immediately recognizable as being warjacks. But at the same time, we wanted them to have a completely different technological feel.
It should not look like the old warjacks. These things, we can do whatever we want. Have fun with it. Go off the grid.
The Eternus Continuum warjack, the heavy warjack called the Nemesis, is by far my favorite warjack design of all of them. There's something about it. We went into it knowing that we kind of wanted it to feel like a bug instead of having, big, beefy, beat down arms, right? It's got kind of these thinner, spindly arms. Weapon hardpoints are located in different locations than you see on the other warjacks. And then it's got these like dragonfly wings and thrusters on its back because it actually flies. And it's so unique amongst the warjack designs for the rest of the game, but also just anything that we've ever done, that I think that's why it really stands out for me. I'm also really enjoying the chance to get to design vehicles. We spent a lot of time thinking about what these light vehicles that we wanted to put into the game might be like and how they're different from faction to faction. The Razorbat, which is sort of this open air two-person tank that the Marshal Wolves flies around in. People have been calling it a flying Jeep. And that's really kind of what it ends up looking like. I mean, it's their sort of answer to, a Humvee. And it comes across like that while also, feeling like a vehicle that I haven't seen before. And I just can't wait to put it on the tabletop.
I'd say my favorite illustration in Warcaster to date is the Free Worlder settlement. It's always nice to be able to see where somebody comes from. Getting that really cool frenetic action and pacing like we've had for some of the fight scenes for the hangar ambush with Continuum and Alliance going at it with each other. The Arc Geyser and Arc Mining illustration. That's the kind of stuff that I love, and that's my favorite piece to date.
I think the image that we used on the cover of the Warcaster rulebook, this was sort of our spotlight image for the Kickstarter campaign, really defines Warcaster, a skirmish between the Iron Star Alliance and the March of Worlds forces, and it kind of depicts everything that goes on in the game. The March of Worlds force is coming through a portable void gate. There's a weaver above them casting a spell. And you get to see the soldiers fighting right alongside the warjack. And meanwhile, there's this massive Iron Star Alliance coming from the left that are about to smash into them. But this is how we imagine the battles looking in Warcaster.
The thing that I like the most about working on Warcaster is that it forces me to think well outside of the box or try to come up with new visuals that we haven't done before. Being able to go, okay, we have a unique opportunity to be able to establish this world or this planet looks like X. This planet looks like Y. And because we have thousands of planets and we're not stuck to, say, our solar system, carte blanche, man.
We want people to look at the characters and the creatures and the robots and the vehicles that we design and covet them. We want you to look at that thing and say, I want to put that on the tabletop. I want to spend the time to assemble it, to customize it, to paint it, and then I want to play with it.
For each faction, as we design these things, we're not held to a hard and fast rule that something has to look like X. We don't have 20 years of established visual aesthetic that we have to adhere to in order to make it work. It's, does this look like it fits within the universe that we are building right now? And that's it. When you're talking about sci-fi and thousands of worlds that exist inside of this setting, the sky is the limit. You can go nuts.
Thanks for joining our presentation on the art and design of Warcaster Neo-Mechanika. If you want to find out more, you can check us out at warcaster.com. There's lots of art, models, and lore all over the website. You can find out all about the world.
I hope that you all have an amazing Gen Con online and that the rest of your year is safe and healthy.